Some people said that I was lying about the symbols, that nobody ever perverted the symbols. But right there is a symbol of black magic. You can see that it uses Egyptian symbols. It uses European translation and animation on Egyptian symbols. So it's something that they do to this day, and even little kids do it, and they're fooling around. You know what I'm saying? Except for these people did it on a deep occult level, and they formed dark temples around that idea. Now, there's a few words that I wanted to go over with you, and those were Heru and Asar is the name of the third day of the month. Heru Metztu is the birthday of Osiris. Also, Heru Earth can also mean to let a matter sink deeply into the heart or mind when you put an H on it. Het, it means to march. Het can also mean warm wind, breath, or to breathe. And het means step. We go on to the Hetupu Nectar. Is offerings of every kind made to the god, the property of the gods and the temples. Hetep is the god of the Sekhet Hetepet, or Elysian fields. Go on to... I'm just giving you a few important words to remember, and also that prove my point. We go on to Kata, which is a place of protection. We go to Kateb, is to kill, to slay. We go down to Kesaru, which is a Nubian title of the sun god. So the Nubians had the sun god, they were worshipping the same thing, and there was many tribes within the Nubians. Okay, they also mentioned the Sudani county and the Libyan desert, so they address where everybody is in hieroglyphics, in periods of time, in dynasties and kingdoms. And when you put it all together, when you put the puzzle together and you go back and you do the math, it really starts somewhere around 15,000 BC to 20,000 BC. When the spiritual knowledge starts coming down. And around 10,000 BC, they start being able to begin to write things down. I'd say about 8,000, 7,000 BC, we start to see the rise of writing. And then the Babylonians start applying it probably around 6,000 BC, 5,000 BCE. So we go on to, when referring to the cuneiform, etc. So there was pictograph, cuneiform, hieroglyphics, but before that there was early forms of writing like cave paintings, and people were starting to go from cave paintings to drawing symbols to represent words and spiritual ideas and spiritual concepts. So we go to Kera Fu, a group of lying gods identified by some with the Hebrews. Okay? So as you study really the hieroglyphic dictionary, you see the link between the Berbers, the Libyans, the Hebrews. You don't see much evidence of Asians. You see the Asians are adopting their culture separately, and this black group that migrated out of Egypt that came back, they passed on their knowledge to everyone on their way out and on their way back. And you have people like the Baker people who migrated and started setting up trade centers in Egypt as well. So you have small groups of other peoples, just like you have in, say, Detroit. Okay, you might have a Hispanic part of town in Detroit, and that doesn't reflect the majority people or how the world views that place. They still view it as a black city, that these people were black. So in the terms of who were the native people, who were the first people, whose people set up shop there first, whose people found God first, what was the religion based on? It was based on the land. It was based on the interaction between the spiritual forces that guide the land and the man's nature, and the interaction between the Nile and the inundation of the Nile and the creatures you find on the Nile, and how they embody spiritual events. And the beetle, how they saw the beetle in the morning and how they made it a sacred symbol, and how it pushed along a ball that resembles the movement of the sun. And it goes back to the idea of as above, so below, which was derived from the Egyptian temples. Just like Einstein was a man of peace, and he spoke of the theory of relativity, and how he had to prove it using eclipses, and how his prediction landed right on point where he said it would. The same way the Masons predicted things, the same way the Egyptians and Babylonians. That's why the megalith was being built for Stonehenge. Okay, that's why Stonehenge was the megalith built in Europe. And they later added on, the henge and the crystal and the stones, etc. Because they were working with light, and they had got the idea from ancient Egypt, where the light was intense and the interaction with the Nile was profound. So was the Rift Valley, where man may have come from, may have evolved from primates. So what you see is quite clear. The hieroglyphic dictionary made by Europeans and white people, basically, all these things that are made by people who aren't black are the proofs that I'm using. Okay? I'm using C.G. Jung. I'm using John Corwell, Wallace, Maxwell, Manly P. Hall, Robert Hewitt Brown, okay, Barnes and Noble's Chinua Achebe, Paul Hamm, Veronica Ion, okay, R.B. Parkinson, Zachariah Stitchin. How many of these authors that I am using are black? Okay? I made my point quite clear. I've used some of the people who would disagree with me's own literature to prove them wrong. I've ruled out every race one at a time. I've shown you that they were merely another race that had a small part of town in Egypt that was taking notes. And they had infiltrators and spies taking notes as well. And only a fool does not know that part of warfare is spying on the enemy. Only a dumbass doesn't understand the point of a scout. Only a fucking dumbass wouldn't understand that the Strait of Hormuz that's being blockaded, that could possibly be blockaded by Iran, is part of how wars are fought and how wars are started. Only a fool would say that I do not know what I'm talking about. Only a fucking idiot who should be put on a fucking pole and shot as a heretic if you apply the same justice to him as the scum would apply to the prophets. Thank you.